Welcome everyone to today's webinar and to our webinar series, Transparency is the New Green. We are really excited today to have Barry Giles from BRE introduce himself and introduce you to BRE and Bream and BRE USA. As you saw in the invitation, we mentioned that there are now 6 green building rating systems used in North America that reward product transparency. So that's why we're bringing to you today Barry, so you can learn more about Bream, coming from Europe to the US. And it's important also that you do understand that there are choices for how buildings can get built and certified, and so that you're able to pick the right program for any particular project that you're working on, and also to begin to understand the differences in how performance or high performance gets measured and rewarded in each of these different systems. So we like to say transparency is the new green. It has raised the bar for comprehensive and standardized reporting from an environmental performance perspective, as well as a material ingredients perspective. Some of the green building rating systems have credits that reward both types of product transparency disclosure. Others have credits for just the one. So today you can see, and it's alphabetical order in the list, not by order of preference or cost, it's just alphabetical. But the key point, and we're going to talk about this later, is that while more rating systems offer credits for products with transparency information, it's key for people to remember that architects, engineers, contractors, owners are not looking for disclosures. They're looking for products with disclosures that ultimately they're able to use to make better informed decisions about the products they put into their buildings to make those buildings higher performing buildings. So we're going to talk about the ease and understandability of today's disclosures and how they're delivered into the marketplace. So we're going to get started with a quick introduction for those of you who are new to Sustainable Minds, and then we'll introduce Barry, and Barry will introduce you to BREAM, and then we'll talk a little bit more about what we've learned as industry analysts tracking the industry of manufacturers creating disclosures, quick demo of the catalog, and we'll leave a chunk of time at the end for Q&A. So yes, this session is being recorded. Yes, you will be able to get the deck later. And any questions that you have during the course of the webinar, please add them to the questions panel, and Barry will be leading that Q&A at the end of the session, and we may question bomb him in the midst of that. So for those of you who are meeting Sustainable Minds and me for the first time, I'm Terry Swack, the CEO and founder of Sustainable Minds, and I founded the company a good decade ago. Our mission has never changed, which is to operationalize environmental performance in mainstream manufacturing to help manufacturers drive revenue and growth through greener product innovation. We're a software company. We're just like Autodesk. Our lead investor from a decade ago is a software company, just like Avitru. Our partners at MasterSpec are a software company, and we sell subscriptions to software services as well as delivering services. We also became a program operator so that we could really deeply understand the landscape of today's technical standards and be able to utilize those standards to influence the creation of more simplified, understandable, and meaningful results. And really looking at the integration of product transparency into product marketing, because product transparency, both environmental performance and material health, are the latest performance criteria that now people are using to make decisions about products. So investing in product transparency from a manufacturer standpoint is really an investment in the way they bring their products to market, not just an investment in creating the disclosure. So there's a lot of education that's required both in the manufacturer's organization, the technical parts, the sales and marketing parts, their specification representatives in their interface with their customers, and all the education for the architects, engineers, and contractors and building owners about what it means to build high-performance buildings and why selecting greener and healthier products contributes to the overall performance of those buildings. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Barry, and Barry's going to introduce himself.
Well, good morning, everybody, and I don't know whether you can see my screen well. I've been thinking that the slides haven't been turning over, so we're very pleased to have everybody here on the call. Thank you, West Coast people, for getting up early, and our East Coast people for being in the middle of your day. I'm Barry Giles. I'm the CEO of BRE America, and that is part of BRE Global, and we'll be talking a little bit about that. My background is quite a few years in this trade, in this business. We've had a lot of interesting times back in the early 2000s, where I helped to create LEED for existing buildings, and we've also been working through, with some of you on the call, things like the Curriculum Committee and other programs for the USGBC. However, some years ago, I could see the LEED program getting tougher and tougher for people doing existing buildings, and I went back to dear old Britain and talked to the BRE and said to them, guys, you know, you're in every other country in the world except America. Isn't it about time you got your place over here? So what I did was is started to bring BREAM here, and as Terry mentioned through her little short presentation there at the beginning, it's BREAM, or you can call it BREEAM. That's entirely up to you. I don't care what pronunciation you use, as long as you use it. Okay, it's the important piece to us here in the program. So BREAM, I'm going to start with what you may think is going a little bit backwards, but first of all, I wanted to start off with what is BREEAM, or what is BREAM, and then take you back a little bit of where it came from, and then work forward of what we're planning to do over the next few years. So BREEAM is the Building Research Establishment Environmental Assessment Method, and boy, what a mouthful. I do appreciate that. But it's the first green building rating system of the world. Was produced back about 30 years ago, and was one of the stops that David Godfrey made on his worldwide tour when he was looking at methodologies for improving buildings. And if you read his biography, you'll note the meetings he had with BRE and looked at the BREAM program. But he came back to America wanting to produce something for the commercial real estate field, and therefore he created LEED. But when you look down in the BREAM program, you'll see a lot of stuff in there that you know already. The way the questions are formatted, a lot of the details of ask have already been included in BREAM for many years. And we're a balanced scorecard with 9 categories. We've been in health and well-being since it started. We've been in energy and water and pollution and carbon. Because we came out of Europe, we were heavily embedded in carbon, zero carbon buildings, net zero, always asking the question about carbon and about getting people to understand that it was a component piece of the metrics that were necessary for BREAM. And therefore, when you look at all other green building rating systems throughout the world, you'll see that BREAM is the bedrock. We're operating in 77 countries. We don't just do single buildings and say we're in that country. We actually have detailed workings going on in those countries, because everything is based on the international system, and I'll get to that in depth a little later. So far, there's about 2.2, 2.3 million projects have been registered in the program, both new construction, existing buildings, etc. There are many different facets of BREEAM, and I'll talk through those in a little while. And we operate through independent licensed assessors. For example, for Bream in use for the program for existing buildings, it is an on-site assessment that is done by a qualified licensed assessor who comes to the site and checks the program out and checks the building out. For new construction, it very much is someone who works closely with you through the whole program of design, construction, opening the building up, and the first year of operation, gaining data to add back into the program. So our licensed assessors are your peers. Many of them already lead APs of note and lead fellows. So many of them you already know, and that list can be found on our website. So let's step back a little bit and look at what the first three letters, B, R, and E, Building Research Establishment. And we are a 96-year-old company. We're already starting to set the party in motion for our 100th year. We've been started just after the First World War, and we have always been a multidisciplinary building science center. We're academic, we're scientific. Everything we do is based in peer-reviewed white papers, scientific analysis, standards setting, and standards production. So we've always been doing that, and we started right back in the beginning of building a better world together. We're in this to form partnerships. We're in this to make sure that everybody gets a part of the action. We're in this to get as many buildings as possible to do something. We'd love them to do BREEAM exclusively, but that's obviously not practical. There are other market stresses and market forces which move the programs forward and should be done. We do a lot of research into the standards and qualifications around the world. We work with ISO setting standards. We work with ISO to be the standard production. So we are the third-party analysis. We do a lot in EU, EN standards, as you'll be seeing a little later. We've got about, so that's actually wrong, we've got about 700 employees now globally. BRE America, which is part owned by BRE Global, has a very small team at the moment. We're growing as the whole program picks up. But the interesting thing at the bottom, we're part of a reinvestment of profits, and I'll show you what that actually means. But I want to expand on that photograph you're seeing on the left-hand side, because this is called an innovation park. This is our largest. It's in Watford in North London, where the headquarters is based, but we're already starting to build these around the world, and latest ones in China and Canada, and we're also looking at our first one here in the US. What this is depicting is residential properties that have been designed by European and British architects. They've been built by British teams on the site that we provide them, and then BRE, how can I say this nicely, we research the heck out of them. Construction people, the building, the white building at the front here, I don't know whether you can see my cursor here, it's actually is built from a modular containers, 40-foot containers. It was obviously a design that's close to the heart of people seeing those containers. There is a time-lapse movie on the BRE website that you can see that in its construction methodology. But we research the things to the nth degree. We're always looking to make certain that we've got as many details as possible from them. We also do a lot of work in this building, creating part hospital rooms. We do a lot of work in dementia, understanding of dementia and how houses could be built to support dementia in place. But BREAM is not our only, nor is it our largest component piece. This is just a small selection of what we do. LPCD, loss prevention, is to do with fire analysis, and that's where BRE started back 96 years ago in fire analysis. Why do people die in fires, and how can we prevent that? Come forward to the Grenfell fire. We were the forensic team that went in to find out why the building caught fire and burnt. Of the others there, which you'll be seeing coming to the US shortly, SABRE is to do with security, to do with analysis, building hardening for anti-terrorist work, things like that. SQL is for civil engineering, then obviously home quality mark, construction excellence, and our own BRE Academy, and that's only a small list of what we had. This URL will take you through to expertise. It is a very heavy website, bregroup.com. We do everything from shape tables of structural analysis to wood rot, to lumber rot, to EPDs, as you'll be seeing a little later. One of the latest is Ethical Labor Sourcing Standard, which came out of the Slavery Act in Britain. This standard, like all our standards, is free. You can download it at any time and make action in it. If you wish to have it certified, is when we asked you to pay. This is now being copied 100% in Australia. Australia just passed the Slavery Act, and we're in partnership with a company there to roll out the Ethical Labour Standard. And we are owned by a trust. We're owned by a charitable trust, which means all our profits, less for R&D and business expansion, go back into education. And we support universities worldwide. We support chairs, we support students, we support research. So, sustainable products, because that's really what's at the front as you as a team, and Terry and her team, the materials and products. And our job is to advise on specifying those that are fit for purpose. And I think that's an important piece to put forward. We don't just give them a sustainable product spec for any product. It has to be fit for purpose and able to improve the sustainability. So it's important to us that we get that right. Here's an example of where we are, EN 15804. It provides the core set of what we do, generation of EPDs for construction products. BRE deals with all parts of the built environment, and that's all it does. It doesn't go out into clothing manufacture or anything else, pure and food or whatever it might be. We're only interested in the construction side, and the basis of that is EN. We do a lot with responsible sourcing, standard BES 6001, looking to make certain that they're being manufactured in ways that won't damage the environment or unfairly exploit the workplace. Slavery and the act of being knowledgeable about where your material is coming from in your manufacturing process is important to us. We also then look for details in certification. We provide this ongoing independent third-party assessment. We are fully backed by science. All our programs, not just BREAM, but all our programs are backed by science. But for those of you here in the US listening and working with BREAM, many people are already working with BREAM in use. And in a moment, I'll be telling you about BREAM for new construction. We'll be seeing that we use this third-party scientifically based analysis. We are not a consensus-driven organization. Anybody can provide us with information to go into BREAM, but it has to be backed by science and it has to be provable. And we look forward to everybody providing that detail to us. We look very carefully by bringing ourselves up to date with what's going on in the marketplace. Impact is a program that is now linked to CAD and BIM, providing the construction professionals embodied environmental impacts and life cycle cost performances of buildings. This is in its infancy. For those of you who have used it abroad, you'll know that it is linked very closely to the 3D and the other programs that you're currently using as architects and engineers. And we're interested in how this could be made more useful here in the US. So we want to hear from you and your input into that program. We are also looking at where that program comes from. Please excuse me, I'm just getting over a cold, so when I take a short drink, my goodness. The life cycle cost analysis, I think, is important to us because obviously we can't just bring European or Hong Kong or Chinese data sets over here. We need to build the US-based data set for costing and get that right to make it useful to each of you. We're also looking quite carefully at how we put this information out. So we have Green Guide Online. Initially, this is about listings of building materials and components that have been assessed. We have a full assessment program. I mentioned about wood rot, and when I first went to BRE a couple of years ago, they're on a pretty big acreage, and of course have the mandatory requirement of having a cricket pitch. But around the perimeter of that cricket pitch, I was most surprised to see these lengths of timber buried in the ground about 3 or 4 feet and standing about 4 feet up. There must have been about 150 of them with little brass plaques on top. And when I asked the guys, hey, what's out there? You got a new idea of fencing? They said, oh no, that's our long-term program to understand how wood rots in the environment. And this is BRE's ethos. If you're going to test something, well, test it in real time. We've been around 96 years. We fully intend to be around the next 96 years, and that we bury timber in around the perimeter of the cricket pitch, and we regularly take assessment of how the wood is rotting in the, how shall I say, the British environment. This is still valuable data in the long term. So we're always looking to put that type of information out and look for cradle to grave in life cycle analysis, and that Green Guide Online is free and able for people to look at. Green Book Live is an online database. There has to be some sort of membership and understanding that the data set in there is useful to suppliers and end users, but we're looking for those products and services that are impactful on the environment. But over the years, what we've done is not just have it as single entities. We've actually built wall sections, brickwork cavity, internal wall, insulation, sheetrock on the inside, cladding on the outside. We've built different wall modules and given an understanding of how those are impactful to the environment, heat retention, U values, etc. And all this is comprehensive, and we want to be able to continue to drive that information as best as we possibly can. But now I want to move into specifics of BREAM. BREAM works on the program of being extremely transparent. BREAM for new construction, which is coming to the US marketplace first quarter of 2019. And I am giving a very large shout out to HOK, especially Annika and her team, who have stepped up to the plate and are helping us bring this program to the US. That's important because every green building rating system in the world, I said, came out of BREAM. Well, BREAM comes out of what's called the international standards. So for each of the segments in use, new construction, civil, whatever it might be, is only based on one single document, which is called the international version. That international version is obviously applicable to the majority of the world, but bringing it into countries which don't have international metrics means that we have to translate. Yes, we have to get the spelling right for aluminium, we have to get the spelling right for laboratories, but the big thing is that we have to do is we do have to change the standards. When we came here with BREAM in use, it took us about 3 months to marry up and change the ISO EN EU standards already applicable in an international standard to those that are applicable here in the US, and most of them we picked were ASHRAE. But, and this is a big but, any changes made to the standards had to be done in such a way that they did not make the credit any easier or any harder. And that is important to us, because when you open up a BREEAM USA in use, or BREEAM USA new construction, and somebody in China exactly the same time is opening up that reference guide, and somebody in Paris is doing it, because we're all doing a building at the same time, it is imperative to us that we are all looking at it exactly the same document, exactly the same ask, exactly the same rigidity. It's just that it's in Chinese, French, and now American English. So that international clients, when they have a BREEAM rating of very good, can compare that directly with another building that they own in China, which is very good. So it's important to us that those standards are continue to be moved forward in that fashion. If you can write quickly, this is where you'll find it, the technical standards, those that have been converted and those that haven't. If you go through BRE Global, BREgroup.com, you can get to every single website around the world, including those in Norway and China and Spain. And yes, you may have to do the dictation change under Google, but you can see what's going on in the rest of the world. So I wanted to give you credit examples, because this will highlight some of the transparency. It also be useful to you to understand the depth of what we're trying to do. This is, you'll get used to the coding, but MAT01 is materials. This is the first credit in materials for new construction. This is the wording from international standard, new construction. Robust is the word we use a lot. Appropriate, assessment tools, specification, low environmental impact, including embodied carbon, over the full life cycle of the building. So we're looking for environmental product declarations, EPDs, and it's important to note that if you had the book open at that credit, you will immediately see underneath it the word evidence, and we provide you with the evidence that we will need to see to prove that you have got this credit correct. The evidence that is written there is the evidence that we require. There's no such thing as credit creep. You provide us that evidence, you're going to get the credit. And in fact, you don't provide it to us, you actually provide it to the on-site assessor, who is going to review this documentation for you and say to you, yes, you have got the evidence, I believe in my professional opinion, this is correct, and I will mark that credit as successful. You see, as BRE America and the licensing body, I don't care about the building. What I care about is the program is run correctly, that you have gathered the evidence, you have done the credit correctly, and the assessor's job is to be the yay or nay. They are the ones that eventually provide you with a certificate. They are the ones that actually give you praise and open the bottle of champagne with you. Our job is to make sure that the assessor does their job correctly. Just because we're miles away, I'm in San Francisco, I shouldn't be dictating what goes on in your building in New York City. That is the assessor's job. That is your peer. That is someone you perhaps know, but whose job is to make sure that the assessment is correct. Here's another product, we explain these environmental product declarations. We give you the standards, where they come from. You can see all this is based out of our international version. So when we start turning this out, and thanks very much to HOK who are grinding this out, I do assure you, is finding the comparative standard that matches ISO 14025 and products under EN, ISO, and ISO 14 and ISO 19 groups. So you can imagine this is quite difficult because it's very easy for them to come up, oh, we can replace that with, you know, ASHRAE whatever, or this standard. But then it has to go through BRE's grind of making certain that those standards are comparable. Other credit examples coming up are under Materials 05, MAT 05. We're looking for design for durability and resilience. Resilience is vitally important to us. In Britain, we have under BRE, we have a whole company which deals with nothing but resilience. We have actually designed a residential property which is flooded to 3 feet, pump the water out and mop the floor and walk straight back into the property. That can also be seen under bregroup.com, and you'll see a lot of details on how the house was built, moving electric sockets up the wall and actually feeding them from the ceiling. I mean, wow, there's a concept. So that a tide of 3 feet or less won't flood the electrical socket and null and void the electrics in a property. Drains in the floors that go to a central pumping system, non-return valves on all the waste pipes going out of the building so that sewage doesn't come back into the building. These sort of basic things can be done when you do a renovation after hurricanes. And I think we ought to, at this point, give a shout out to those poor people coming up in the panhandle of Florida who are about to see a major hurricane heading their way. Materials efficiency, MAT06, measures to optimize material efficiency. And that's important, that we want to make certain we do that without compromising structural stability for those of you in the design and engineering side. And the surface life of the building, that's important too. We're looking to make other standards which fit, and let me just advance forward, asking you to make some calls to action, because I think it's important that although I've put here review the credits within the BREEAM International, we really need you to tell us how this fits into the American marketplace. BRE update BREEAM and all other associated programs on a rolling 3-year cycle. We don't do in-year, or we don't do addendums, except if there's a spelling or a calculation mistake, but we do not make changes to the credits. We do not make, when we do a 3-year cycle, we don't make massive changes to the credits. You'll know a long way in front what credits are changing, and what the biggest target is to improve the environmental footprint, to improve the impact that we're having, to better take charge of carbon, to reduce energy, to improve the indoor health and environmental quality of the people in the building. But we need your input. That's why we partner with other rating systems. Many people say, oh, Barry, you're just trying to put LEED out of business. Ridiculous. LEED's been using BREEAM credits in Europe for years. We're partnered with Fitwell, we're working with Measurable, we're working with major architects like HOK and Gensler. You know, our job is to build a better world together, not on our own. God, we don't want to be doing it on our own. We haven't got enough people to do the job. So we want to be working with you. Architects, we need your input, because it's important to us to know as soon as that standard comes out, the first portion of 2019, the first quarter, it'll be for public comment. We'll be interested in your input. It's no use to say to us, oh, well, we don't like that. We need to see scientific evidence to prove that it doesn't work, or this credit doesn't work, or this target doesn't work, or that ASHRAE standard, oh, that's wrong, you can't use that. We need your input. We're looking for that. We're ready for that. And we welcome that as much as you can possibly give us. We're still the most widely used green building rating system in the world. We will continue to be that, and we want to work with everybody to make that happen. And we continue to look for the transparency which is necessary in this industry. It's not a one-stop shop. We've got to make certain that everybody gets an opportunity to put a building into a system that can give them the results and get them the kudos that they deserve in that building. architects, engineers, operations, buildings up for 40, 50, 60 years. We've got to give credence and kudos to the people who are running their buildings. And we want to make that happen together. Well, I've come to the end of my piece. Building a better world together is important to us, and we're looking for that science behind it to make that happen. Here's my details. That's actually my cell phone number. If you actually phone that, no, I'm on mute, so it'll probably buzz and you'll hear it in the background. But that is my actual cell phone. That's actually my email address. And I welcome input from any of you. I think these slides are going to be available to you. Let's have some more questions, or else Terry is going to throw up the half dozen of really tough ones she promised me that she had. And Terry, I'm going to turn it back over to you now.
Well, thank you so much, Barry. That was a really great, comprehensive overview of BRE and BREAM and your intent in the world. So we will, for certain, have a good discussion in a little bit. And as we segue into Sustainable Minds work and what we believe in and what we do, I'd like to pick up where Barry left off, which is that Sustainable Minds partners with every program operator, every material ingredient disclosure program, all of the people in the industry who are looking to provide useful tools for manufacturers to make higher performing products and for people to assess and utilize those tools to make better informed decisions. We are absolutely agnostic in terms of those disclosure types, and we want to recognize every green building rating system that also rewards transparency. And that's why Barry is here and why we're bringing you the story of BRE and BREAM. So now we are in touch with the technical team in the UK to keep track and work with them to understand the documentation that they will be looking for, that they look for now, and they will continue to look for as they bring this technical standard to North America. So from day one, when Sustainable Minds got involved in the building construction industry, and that was about 2012 when a preview of LEED version 4 came out, and said product transparency is going to be a key pillar of LEED version 4 because it's time that we used science, that manufacturers used scientific methods to evaluate the environmental performance and material health of their products, and then to go through the process of creating these market-facing documents that prove that they've actually gone through this evaluation. And when we evaluated EPDs available in 2012 from around the world, and again, for those of you who don't know us, our first software product is a streamlined eco-design and LCA tool for product manufacturers to use in early stage product development so they can understand the environmental performance of their products, what's causing the greatest impacts, rapidly create competing scenarios where they can look for new strategies, new business models, new inputs to reduce those impacts and create new higher performing products. So it was a natural transition for us to develop another group of products using LCA at its core to now help manufacturers tell those stories, those environmental performance stories from doing LCA to the market to help people understand what is it that drives environmental impacts and which manufacturers are really doing things to improve. And so our premise from day one has always been, yes, product transparency is critically important, and it does help manufacturers build credibly greener brands, but not only by producing disclosures, right? Any manufacturer who has the same amount of money can lay it down, have an LCA done, get an EPD, get it verified. The differentiator is when the manufacturer actually can demonstrate that they understand what that information means, and that they are either currently driving it back into product development or they intend to, because now they really do understand where meaningful performance gains can be met. And what's super critical about being able to tell these stories is, one, so that the sales and marketing people from the manufacturing companies can engage with architects, engineers, contractors, building owners in a meaningful way, which means that everybody learns about what needs to be done to improve the environmental performance of products and buildings, and ultimately decrease the impact on the built environment. But what we've seen since LEED version 4 and now other green building rating systems here in North America have embraced product transparency, it's created a number of ongoing challenges, both for AECs as well as for manufacturers, that largely have to do with products with disclosures not being super easy to find, and more importantly, those disclosures that exist today in the formats that they're delivered don't make it easy to understand what the technical information means and how to use that technical information to make decisions. And by the way, there is a couple of survey questions as you exit the webinar that I would invite you to respond to specifically on this topic. This is one of our research topics for 2018 and 2019 to understand how people are using disclosures to make decisions. And further, manufacturers are really challenged to create these disclosures. It's a lot of work, it's expensive, it's risky for them to disclose this information. But now that they have it, they're challenged with operationalizing it into the way they sell and market products. And the fact is that most people today still will go to a manufacturer's website first when doing research on products. And most manufacturers' websites aren't really set up to make it easy for people looking for products with transparency information to find just those products. So, having been in this space for a really long time and being a user-centered software development company, the Transparency Catalog is informed by all of these challenges being addressed by all the constituents in this space: the people who design and build buildings, the people who make products, and ultimately the people who certify or verify products and buildings. So how do we put this all together in a place that educates people on all sides and helps those manufacturers get those products into the hearts and minds of those people who are making those decisions? And so a lot of these things are pretty fundamental to the way we do business, that it's always about educating while we're delivering high value, easy to use, understandable tools. The Transparency Catalog is always free to use. There's no login. We actually, as a software company who sells SaaS or cloud software on a subscription model, we believe that monetizing data, which is a valid business model, Google uses it, Facebook uses it, others in this space use that same model. We don't believe it's the right business model for the transparency space to be gathering user data or usage data and selling that to third parties. And we have a great range of partners, more than what's shown here, but all of us who are shown here also believe in that security and data privacy is paramount, and we all have that same approach to doing business, which is why we can partner. So as we built the catalog, we launched it 2 years ago at Green Build in 2016. Our focus has always been on brands, being able to bring attention to those brands who have invested in product transparency for the North American market. And so the catalog is every single brand that has done some kind of transparency disclosure, whether it's environmental or material health, to one, bring attention to that brand, but also to help the market understand that today there really are quite a number of manufacturers, it's over 1,000 now, who have invested in product transparency across a range of CSI master format divisions, that there really is enough manufacturers and enough products to build a building through the selection of high performance products. So last year, we published a trend report. Sustainable Minds, our process for building the catalog is dependent on our role and our activities really as industry analysts, where we track every green building rating system, as we spoke about before, but also every program operator and every material disclosure rating system or disclosure program. And we track to see every month any new manufacturers or all the new manufacturers who invest and have published some kind of transparency information. We also created the first North American PCR catalog, which is updated monthly. So now manufacturers and anyone else can find every PCR organized by CSI master format, so that you can see whether there's a PCR that's current and relevant to products in your industry. But at the end of 2017, and so this is from our 2017 trend report, it turned out that there were 35 active, of the 35 active CSI master format divisions, 24 divisions had created one or both types of disclosures, and you can see certainly a lot more material ingredient disclosures than EPDs. And that's understandable. EPDs are quite a lot of work, very technical, requires an industry group to get together to create PCRs in the first place, so a lot more involved than the process of material ingredient disclosures. And you can see that certain industry sectors have invested more than others, and largely because those are products that people interact with more closely, and there's a greater call for that type of disclosure. And so we have all kinds of data that we can count. We can count the number of manufacturers, we can count the number of disclosures. But if you go back to what I'd said at the very beginning, which is that people aren't looking for disclosures, they're looking for products with disclosures that ultimately help them achieve the different credits in the different rating systems that they're looking to get their buildings certified for. Or even increasingly, we're hearing that design firms are designing according to green building rating system criteria, even when they are not necessarily going for that certification. So the point is that people are looking for products and not just disclosures, but we can't count the number of products. That number is unknowable because most disclosures represent more than one product. And it's not clear in the disclosure the number of actual products that it represents. And therefore, it's difficult for even the manufacturers, reps, and certainly for people in the industry to understand which products are actually covered by a particular disclosure. We even tried to kind of do some back of envelope calculation. We've even seen some disclosures that cover over 1,000 products. So we kind of did an average and said, look, there's somewhere between 10,000 and 1 million products that have some kind of transparency information. And the transparency catalog is the only solution in the marketplace today that actually enables a manufacturer to list every single product that they have that has a corollary disclosure. And at the core of each standard listing, a manufacturer can list every product they have, organized by master format, division, and section, where they can append their own brand name so users know here's what this manufacturer calls their own products in that section or division. And then the user can browse each section, they can open the entire thing, see every product. And these links take the user to the manufacturer's website where they can get more detailed information, but they can see right away the number and types of disclosures, whether the manufacturer has environmental performance disclosures, EPDs, and/or material ingredient disclosures. Sometimes manufacturers have multiple types of disclosures for each product, and you can see in a glance and ultimately get those disclosures right here, all in one place. Make sure that they're current and valid, and learn about what the disclosures mean. So I'm going to invite all of you to visit the catalog, click through some of the featured brand that does integrate product transparency into product marketing to tell those meaningful stories about what manufacturers are actually doing to improve. We have our own brand of EPD called a transparency report. We called it something different because we wanted to make sure that people realized there was something different about the way we were delivering environmental information to the market, integrated with all the functional performance and all the other attributes people use to make decisions about products, access to the product page on the manufacturer's website, the specifications, and then integrating the actual information about what do these impact categories mean, where are the greatest impacts happening, what's causing them, and what's the manufacturer doing to improve. We're continuing to build specification tools that help manufacturers, reps, and distributors put together great submittal packages, bid packages, teaching people in the firms how to select and specify their products and make it simple to get access to all the disclosures at the end of the day. We have absolutely seen continued growth month over month. People coming from all over the world actually staying for a long time, consuming a lot of content. And what we'd like to say is the highest value user in year one are the manufacturer's own internal and external stakeholders who themselves are learning how to talk about product transparency, what it means for their own companies, and in one click, literally see and have access to every product the manufacturer provides. What the stats show as well is that those featured brands that have transparency reports or any of our transparency reporting tools get 5 to 10 times more usage with every stat that's used to measure usage. People are coming and consuming more information. They're staying longer because people want to learn and understand what this information means. So we're going to go to our Q&A session and open it up. Barry, do you want to take a first stab at any questions that are in the control panel?
Yes, sure, Terry, not a problem. And a question from, I knew Dan would ask a question. Yeah, the presentation, I believe, is being shown up on your website at a later date. Isn't that correct, Terry?
Yes, it will be. And the link to it will be sent out in the next couple of days after it's up.
And another question came in about, is there a training program in the US to become an accredited BREEAM auditor? Actually, the word is assessor, and yes, currently we have BREEAM in use, assessor training. We run those. Normally we talk to the people who are interested in that program. We put together a group to do that. It's a 2-day session. It includes all the materials. It even includes the exam at the end. And Roxana, if you give me an email, I'll put you in touch with our outstanding operations director, Brianna Wheeler, who will make contact with you and arrange to get classes set up with you. More than happy to do that. For the new construction, that's not coming out until next year. Obviously, those architects, international architects who are already BREEAM assessors in Europe and the rest of the world do have a formal handshake across into the USA. There may be a little bit of updating that's necessary, but if you're already a currently up-to-date, fully paid up member of the BREEAM International Assessor group based out of Watford, and for the rest of the world, you are obviously going to get a quick step forward into the USA market, but at the same time we will be rolling classes out as soon as possible. Hopefully guys, let's be sensible about this, you'll know about that by the end of this year, when we're tracking and putting those details out into the marketplace. Again, it will be a couple of days of intense work. It'll include an exam, but we'll be bringing out more details of that towards the end of this year to give you an idea of what's happening. Of the other rating systems which are coming through, the civil and the other types, excuse me, Sabre, etc. We'll be giving details out of those as they come to the US marketplace, and you'll be able to see more information about those as it happens. Other questions? And thank you, Roxana has already sent me details, and I'll put her in touch with Brianna. What have you got, Terry?
Well, I think I'm going to put a finer point on what I think people are probably hoping you'll say. People are familiar with a number of green building rating systems that you've mentioned already. Can you just simply say, how is BREEAM different than
I think it comes up in three sections, really. For us, in the existing building marketplace, BREEAM in use is faster. It's more comprehensive. It's much more fiscally sound. And there is no prerequisites. There are no prerequisites to get to start. Any building can go into it. There's no, oh dear, you're in a hospital, or oh dear, you're in a warehouse, or oh dear, you're in a distribution center. No. Any building can go into BREEAM in use. Any building can get started. Any building can get moved on. And there is no requirement, there's no mandatory requirement to certify. You'll notice from my opening slides that we had, 2.2, 2.3 million buildings in the program, yet only 500,000, 600,000 of those have been certified. And this is fairly common. We're seeing benchmarking as being the most important component piece of BREEAM in use. For the new construction marketplace, we're seeing that because you have an auditor, an assessor who is working with you from hopefully the first step, that you have a peer in the room who is conscious of understanding how a building is built, how a building is designed, how contractors work, how clients change their minds halfway through, etc. All those wonderful things that go on during the design and construction of buildings. And that assessor is of course wanting to make certain, and has to make certain, that the assessment against BREEAM standards is correct, that they understand your language. They are people in your business who and they can understand the difficulties of getting these things done. And that is really one of the big pieces that BREEAM brings to the marketplace. It's the transparency of understanding that we fully realize that no two buildings are the same, that no credit can be applied so rigidly that just because you miss it by 1%, you don't get the check mark. That's ridiculous. You've got to move all buildings forward, and we aim to do that together with you. I think that covers that fairly well.
Well, Barry, I'm going to wrap this up by showing a sneak preview to those folks who have hung out the entire time and are still here. I'm going to give a sneak preview of some new functionality coming out in the catalog before Green Build. And I'm showing this because we spoke so specifically about being industry analysts, really deeply understanding what's happening in the building product industry by CSI master format, division, and section. Obviously, our partnership with MasterSpec has really informed our knowledge of how products are selected and the specification process. And as user experience designers, we have resisted adding filtering by CSI until now, until there were enough products across enough CSI master format divisions that CSI filtering could actually be useful for folks looking for products that way. So what you're going to be seeing shortly is we'll be adding a toolbar to the front page. So nothing's going to change in terms of showing all of the brands who are participating and contributing to the product transparency efforts. But now we've built in the ability to select a master format division, then select the section, and then find products that way. And what you're going to see now is every single brand and every single product from those brands in those CSI master format divisions. And then the user will be able to filter by seeing everything that there is initially and filtering down to the section that they're looking for, just down to the brands and down to the product level, and even being able to further filter by rating systems credits. We've been sharing this pretty substantially with designers and specifiers through our product development process, as well as with manufacturer specification reps. And what has absolutely been the feedback from participants as well as testers is that this is really going to transform both for spec reps the distance between engagement and sales and specification, and rapidly compress the amount of time that design firms and contractors and subcontractors are going to be spending to find those products that will meet those specifications, and also make the submittal process that much simpler for any of these green building rating systems that their building is going to get certified to. So I'll wrap up by saying, Barry, thank you so much for sharing your stories with us today. And thanks to all of you who took time out of your busy days to attend the webinar and stay here through the end. Watch for more information from BREAM and from Sustainable Minds, and you know where to reach us. So have a great day. And again, if you have a moment or two to take the survey on your way out, that would be much appreciated. So thanks, Barry, and everyone have a great day.